Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host. I have no side host today, but I do have an amazing guest that I am so excited to have this conversation with because, quite honestly, I'm being very selfish with this one. It's been a while since my dear friend Brooke and I have got to catch up. So this is going to benefit everybody, me, the listeners, I don't know, anybody else who might ever come across this podcast. So, Brooke Goudy, welcome to the Be a Better Being podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here.
Well, you and I go, I'm not going to say way back, but way back to 2016, which at this point in life feels like a gazillion years ago, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially when I look at where you are now from where you were when I met you. So we just finished celebrating America's Independence Day, right? And this theme of independence and freedom. And when I think about a person who embodies that, you always come to my mind. And I'm so excited to have this conversation because you, my dear, I've been watching you, stalking you obviously on social media and just watching you grow and flourish and literally explode it's just been really awesome. And I'm so excited to have this conversation because you have so much to share. So I'm going to let you take it away. Let's just give a little background on you and then we'll get into the story.
Okay. Well, what exactly do you want to know about me? Just kind of my start into biking or back when we first met, a little bit of that story.
No, my friend. Yeah, no, we're gonna go back to when you and I met. So I'll
Okay.
start that part.
Okay.
You are a nurse for Denver Public Schools,
Yes.
and you took my U Revolution class. I think we decided it was roughly 2016. It's hard to keep track of the years now, but I think that's the class that you were in, 2016.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I would say, yeah, I'm a dramatically different person than the start of that. I decided that I wanted to take U Revolution because I did not feel fulfilled physically, spiritually, mentally. I just really hadn't really tapped into my resilience and my strength. And I wanted to become a better person physically and health wise. And it was an opportunity for me to really start to discover just a tiny bit of the strength and resilience and the authentic person that I truly was.
Well, and what I loved about meeting you in that class was number one, you're a nurse. So anytime I have medical professionals take my class, I'm always just a little bit nervous, like, oh gosh, they probably know more than I do. What are they gonna, what am I gonna say wrong? But you were so very open and willing to receive my information and to talk about it and to share the things that you didn't know and the things that you struggled with. So can you maybe even give a little more detail on just some of those basics back then?
I think just to be quite vulnerable with your audience that I don't think I was very healthy to my body. And I really was like a sponge wanting to absorb all the information that you had about how sleep affects our health and how I could do better at sleeping, how moving my body can bring excitement and joy, and challenging my body to be able to challenge my body can bring excitement and joy. And so I think for me, even though I was a health professional, I think each one of us as individuals searching for a better self, really depending on when we come to a program like yours, really you want to absorb all of those things. You get very excited. At that point, you aren't the expert. You are like a kid that wants to do good for themselves. And you presented it with such joy. And I am, if anyone knows me, always living in joy. Most of the time in joy. That was my goal, is to find joy again.
Yeah, and I know that was a particularly difficult time for you. Just, number one, being a nurse, number two, being a school nurse. Number three, balancing personal things and the work stuff and, you know, kids that have issues going on that you as a school nurse are, impacted by. And it and yet you still do have this amazing radiating energy, but I at that point I saw a tiny fraction of it. Right? I met you when you were not your most joyful self. And I think that's a big part of this that I want to get across for people who maybe at their moment in life right now are not at your most joyful self. I promise you it can be different. And Brooke is like living, breathing proof of that. So you go through the class, you learn a few things, but you don't just learn it. You actually want to continue to learn and be curious. And we did, a few personal training sessions. We tried to kind of figure out strategies to help you get on a healthier track with certain choices and balancing all the different things. And then we kind of lost touch for a few years, right? And then one day I literally see you on social media as like doing all of these amazing things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get back into the details of how and what and who and why, because it is phenomenal. So let's go ahead and fast forward to when this higher level version of Brooke really started to live her life.
Yeah, and I just really, at this moment, as you were talking, had a aha moment, Michelle, that so I do wanna just go back a tiny
Mhm.
bit. When it one of the most vulnerable and beautiful things that you can do for yourself is to take a first step. My journey to self-discovery of my own resilience, of my own joy was very slow, and it started with, I think, being in your program. It was there that was a catalyst that helped me continue to move forward, and I would say that it was very slow, but in the end, it was very powerful. So after we lost touch, I continued on this very slow journey of just trying to find my own resilience and strength. I was in therapy. My personal life, I felt like was kind of falling into ruins as even on this journey, right? I felt like my personal life was falling into ruins. I was going through a divorce. I was, for the first time, in having to be fully and completely independent. A person who literally did not know how to drive to the mountains because my husband drove me around all over the city. The best I could do was drive around my neighborhood, to a person who had to take driving lessons all over again and who had to buy a car and had to buy their own furniture and pay all of their own bills. And so for me, it was a drastic switch to independence. And through that experience, I started to learn about my own resilience, about my own light, about the authentic self that I have inside of me. And that exploded into me wanting to share that with other people. So I started to ride bikes. Moving my body is really important to me, and riding bikes brought me so much joy. And as I looked around me, I saw a lot of people around me who didn't quite look like me. I was introduced to riding bikes by a boyfriend, middle-aged white male, and as I'm here in Colorado, that is who I mainly saw at bike parks when I was even being challenged at events and festivals, and I really wanted to know, what could I do about that? Wh How could I bring more people to this thing that brought me so much joy? And I spent time mainly focusing on women. How do I get women to come out here and learn? Well, not really learn, but really have that feeling of joy that I was having from cycling.
I love that. And when I think about the joy that you have, and I feel like when I think about riding a bike, there is some sense of freedom, right? There's freedom and independence in that because you literally are doing it yourself. So you're independent, but it's the freedom to go where you want, to do it on your own, and the freedom to explore and go and really see some things and do some things that are difficult and challenging, but they bring you that sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, which I think all of those put into the bucket equals joy. Right. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah. And for those not watching on YouTube, Brooke is the opposite of a white male. Okay. She is an African American female. So if you're not watching, you've got to be, well, what is she? Right.
Yeah.
But yes. And I mean, a relatively minority population here in Colorado, right? We're very white here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
Yes.
what we
Totally
are. But
okay.
to your point,
Yeah.
right, right. When you're doing something, you don't see anybody else who looks like you doing it. It's like, well, why is nobody else like me doing this? Right. And
Right.
then that you wanted to figure out a way because you know how great it makes you feel and the connection and the independence and the freedom that you get from doing it. So you decide to kind of embark on this journey of bringing women into the mix and bringing Black women into the mix. So explain a little bit about what that actually looks like now.
Well, I like to explain it like this. I am a school nurse, as you said, and I went into a classroom and we showed one of my films. I have about 2 or 3 films out there about the work that I'm doing. And one tagline of almost all of those films is representation matters. It's a lot easier for a woman to do something if she sees other women doing it. It's a lot easier for a Black woman to do something or motivated to do something if they see other Black women doing that. And so one of the kids raised their hand and said, what, what, well, why is that important? I don't understand. And I paused for a minute because I thought, wow, how do I explain this to a second grader? This is going to be quite difficult. And I said, just because you don't see someone do something, right? Like, let's say you want to become a doctor and you don't see anyone that looks like you that's a doctor. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. But there's something that grows really big inside of you, inside of your heart, when you look at someone doing that thing. Let's see if you had images of a female doctor in front of you constantly, then inside of your heart, you know that, oh, people like me do that. And it feels so much easier for you to be able to achieve that goal. And so that's what I wanted to create. Like you said, there's not very many people of color in Colorado, but still disproportionately, there still were not a lot of Black women on bikes. And I know that there's several reasons for that, but one is just representation itself. And so I wanted to create that. I wanted to show that folks that look like me, and again, if you're just listening, when I say that, it means a woman, it means a Black person, it means a person who doesn't have a cyclist physique. Like I don't have a typical cyclist body. I would say I'm a school nurse. I am probably your next door neighbor. I'm very much like your next door average, ordinary person. And I wanted to show that average, ordinary people that look like me, can have extraordinary adventures. And once you show that to people, they say, well, if she can do it, I can do it. I think a lot of times when we're looking at magazines, when we're looking at mountain biking, or we're looking at endurance cycling, we see people who look a certain way. And we're like, oh, well, of course they can do that. I can never do something like that. And I don't want to take away that those people that we usually see have dedicated their life and a great deal of time and effort to the sport of cycling. But I do want to take away this idea that cycling and endurance cycling and mountain biking and those outdoor adventures only belong to them. That I want people to see me and know that, oh, like, it doesn't make me feel bad at all for them to look at a picture of me, to watch me in a movie, to watch me moving my body and say, if she can do it, then I definitely can do it too.
I love that so much. It brings me right back to my grad school thesis, my research project. It was about modeling. That's exactly what it was about. And my study was I had people of all backgrounds and ages and of all skill levels watch a model do a squat. Okay, we're doing a physical activity, a squat. So they watched this model do the squat perfectly. And then there was another group that watched the model struggle, get better, do it perfectly. And it was the group that watched the model who was more like them struggle, get better, do it perfectly, that gave those participants more confidence that they also could accomplish that task versus watching the model who does it perfectly. So, that's just another degree of representation, right? Like I'm representing that I'm just like you. I wasn't good the first time I got out on a bike either. But now
Absolutely.
look at what I'm doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had some great adventures, Michelle, as I've been on this journey. One thing that I'm most proud of is riding my bike from Canada to Mexico. So I rode my bike for about 2,000 miles, climbing over 200,000 vertical feet. It took me well over 40 days to be able to do this. It was self supported. So I took care of myself. I carried all the things that I needed on my bike and traveled from one area of nothing out in the wild to the next. And I am so proud that I was able to be representation for that, of that journey. I did a very similar thing in Iceland where I backpacked through the West Fjords, a very isolated area of Iceland. And I'm so proud that people were able to see my journey. There were failures, there were times of growth, and there was an extreme amount of joy.
Well, yeah, you and I,
And
when we
I
connected a
and
while
and
ago,
I
you
would
told
say
me that
that,
story
like,
about your
I
travels from Canada to Mexico, and I was just astounded and astonished and so impressed. And again, just from the young woman I knew to this is like it's mind blowing, quite honestly. And I love it. I love it so much. Let's talk a little bit about some of those lessons learned and the growth that happened on any of the journey that you've been on. What are some big ones that really stand out for you?
for me, one thing that has been really persistent, especially in endurance cycling, is this idea of how loud it is in the city. And I am not just talking about the horns or the helicopters or the sirens. I'm talking about how loud that voice inside of you is that tells you that you can't do it, that tells you that you're not good enough, that tells you that your body is too big for movement, that your body is not strong enough. Yeah, I heard that a lot in the city. It wasn't until I was able to get out on those remote mountainous areas that I got to hear the whispers. And the whispers are those parts of you that tells you you can do this. You are so strong that it's you, like you are creating the power to be able to move forward. And that no matter how fast or slow you do it, that you have the ability to just keep moving. And for me, that's one of the most beautiful things that's happened to me is to learn how strong I am because all of the negative self-talk underneath it was myself, another part of me that was trying to encourage me to move forward and to do these big things, but I could not hear it. And so to be out there, to be able to so clearly hear it, because I think sometimes, like, that negative self-talk can be so loud, and really, I don't know what that is. I don't know why that is, that it's really hard to hear the whispers of how resilient you are, and once you hear that, once you like an antenna, when you tune into it, it becomes so much louder on and off the trail. So when I got off that trail, I knew how resilient I was. I knew how strong I was. That antenna, I can tune into it more often now. When there is self doubt, when there's insecurities, I make sure to tune in so that I can hear what used to be whispers, but which are so clear to me now that you are so strong, you are so resilient, and that you can do anything.
I love that. So there actually is a reason why our negative self-talk is so loud. It's because that is rooted in our survival mechanism. And your inner doubt, your inner fear, your inner critic is screaming at you in some attempt to protect you. At least that's its intent. Now, I love how it comes to you as a whisper, right? And I think that is such a really great metaphor because I think we all have the little whisper. It's, is it clear and are we hearing it? It's
Oh,
there. Sometimes it's just really fuzzy. And like you said, tuning in like an antenna and being intentional about that, and you only get better at doing that when you have allowed yourself to get the practice to do it. And escaping the physical noise of the city to get to where there's true silence so that you can hear the screaming, but you can also hear that whisper in the background and be like, wait, what is that? Let me check that out a little more. I would imagine that developed, right, over the course of time.
yeah. And I'll tell you another unique thing that developed was this idea, and it just came to mind when you told me about that. Why is it so loud? Because it is trying to protect you. It is this idea of acknowledging that it's trying to protect me. So not dismissing it. So one thing that I did do on the trail, getting over fear, right? So if you're out there in the middle of nowhere, there's things that want to hurt you, animals, not really want to hurt you, but you're on their turf. A grizzly is not a friend. Right? And I wanted to, even though I knew that I could do this thing, that I could travel out in the wild, out and survive and ride my bike, there were these this louder voice that said, "Don't do it. It's so scary out there." And I, as I talked earlier, trying to listen to that whisper that got louder that said I could do it, I was doing a lot of that, but also as my journey continued, I started to acknowledge that louder voice that said, this is really scary, and acknowledging the fear and saying, thank you. Thank you for trying to protect me. I completely understand that. I just want you to know that I've got this, that you're a little part, and there's
Right.
this other bigger part that knows that we can do this. And that really helped me to move forward. So I say that's like lesson number two. One was that I could hear clearly and could tune into the parts of me that knew that I was resilient and strong. And lesson number two is that the other thing, the thing that is the opposite of that, that thing that's telling you not to do it, the thing that's telling you, oh, this is very scary journey, that to not completely dismiss it, that feeling of being uncomfortable, but to acknowledge it, to understand how it's trying to protect you, and to be able to say to it, we've got this.
I love that. I would imagine too, in addition to your own loud voice, there were probably some external loud voices telling you, you're crazy, you shouldn't do that, you're going to get hurt, why are you doing this? Share a little bit about what that is like and how you managed all of that and, decided to do it anyway.
I don't think, I think that on this entire journey of mine, that there's been external voices that have said all of those things, Michelle. And they have said to me, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense to me. That there are some people out there who believe that this type of adventure, that cycling, that using these beautiful trails that we have out here are for only certain types of people. Unfortunately, that there's not enough room for everyone to be outside. And for me, I clearly feel differently. I believe that all bodies are good bodies and that all bodies should be moving to the best of their ability because it brings so much joy. And I think was quite difficult for me to hear that, especially as someone who is out there. If you Google my name, you'll just see tons and tons of articles pop up, and you'll be able to read comments underneath them of people who don't believe, have the same values and belief as myself about how this work should move forward. I just have to continue to make sure that I am understanding why I'm doing this work and co- and continuing to lean into discomfort with reflecting on why others might feel uncomfortable with the work I'm doing and finding ways to meet them and finding ways to meet them where they are and explaining to them why this work is important. And so I've spent a lot of time doing that. I mean, I travel all over the country talking to different groups about the work that I'm doing and why it is important and how they can take a step forward and moving into this work with me and having them continue to be curious, but like I think it's really important for me to not get discouraged. And that takes a lot of like self care and a lot of other things that I do in my routine to help me with that. And a community, being surrounded by a community that's so loving and that is constantly having me reflect on why I'm doing this work and helping to support me through this work. And that's how I deal with the loud voices on the outside. It's really by taking time to listen to the voice on the inside and those voices inside of my community. And like I said, always understanding and acknowledging that those voices are people trying to protect themselves and protect their own ideas and their own values. And so, really trying to meet them and support them into better understanding why this work is so important to me.
And it's so I literally am at a loss for words just because I know what an impact you are having on so many people, young, old, all of the, all in the middle. And, I believe movement is medicine. And the more movement we can get people doing, the healthier, happier versions of humans we are going to have, which only benefits everybody. So you went on this journey of self-discovery and you found it a lot through biking and the biking community, but you also decided to challenge yourself to do. I mean, nobody said, "Hey, Brooke, we want you to do this ride from Canada to Mexico." Right? It was like, "Hey, Brooke, I'm going to do this ride from Canada to Mexico." Right? And so it was you taking that initiative to get very uncomfortable, do something very scary. I can't imagine like being out on a dark stretch of road and who knows how long it's going to be and your water's running low and the weather's coming in and it's getting dark and all the things that must go on in your mind, right? Where the doubt creeps in and the fear creeps in and the, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing this creeps in.
Yeah.
And that is a metaphor for what everybody goes through at various points in life. Right? I mean,
Yes.
whether it's, starting a business or ending a relationship or starting a relationship or whatever it is, right? Everything is scary. The unknown is always scary. And we can find ourselves in situations where we're going to doubt and question. And yet somehow we figure out a way to get through it all, right? So when you think about how this has then really translated into your life aside from biking, how do you see your life different and the way you live your life different from previously having gone on this journey?
There's two things. One is, as you know, during the pandemic, I don't know what you would call this. I call it like the racial reckoning, the social justice reckoning. We had a pandemic, but also we had in that moment this racial awakening that happened in this country as well. And we started to concentrate on a lot of trauma that has been experienced by Afro Americans, the trauma and the inequality that that trauma has caused. And so we started to see lots of articles on that, movies, books from past and old, right? From the new to the old, right? Everything was bubbling to the surface. And we spent a lot of time concentrating on that trauma. And for me, it was very difficult and very triggering the amount of time that our country spent concentrating on that trauma. For some, I know they would say that that was really, really important. And I can see the importance of it. But I also thought there is another idea that I want people who look like me to have, especially young people, since I work with so many young people. And that's the idea that not only did Afro Americans, so enslaved people who were brought here, experience trauma, but they also were hugely resilient. They also were very strong. They also had the shittiest of all of it, and they still experienced joy. They still sang. Some of the best music we have come from Afro Americans. They still dance. They took the crappiest parts of the pig or whatever was left over in the field, and they made the most flavorful, delicious food. All of this is a part of our culture, and it's so beautiful. And that's one of the things that I wanted to focus on was the strength, resilience, and joy passed down to me by my ancestors. Now I know trauma has been passed down to me too. We all know that the trauma that our parents, whether we're white, black, or brown, whatever, that trauma can be passed down to us. And as a Black woman, I probably have a shitload of trauma that's been passed down to me. But what I want people to know that as a Black woman, I have a shit ton of joy that's been passed down to me. I have a shit ton of resilience and strength that's been passed down to me. And so when I got out there, my why, my reason for going and doing this, despite doubt, was to be able to show and express to others that very thing that was passed down to me so that they could see that despite being able to see so much trauma in the news that had been passed down as well.
I love you so much. And the more I talk to you, just the more I love you. I mean, there are just people, people take my class, and I think a lot of times people don't realize what I get from it. And there's, over the 10 years of doing that year revolution with Denver Public School employees, there's a nice chunk of people that have probably given more to me than I've ever given to them. And you are definitely one of them, Brooke. And I'm going to get emotional here. I'm so happy for this connection, but I'm just so proud of you and so inspired and amazed by what you have grown into and blossomed into and what you are doing with it. And I mean, I know all the people that are going to be impacted by it and continue to be impacted by it. I can't wait to just keep watching what you're doing. So before we officially wrap, I would love for you to tell people just some of those big moments, the things that you're doing, where we can find you. Rowdy Goudy, I mean, gosh, does it get better than Rowdy Goudy? No, it doesn't. So give us a little bit of like what that looks like in like the daily day-to-day goings on of Brooke.
Yeah, so right now I'm focusing on my organization, Rowdy Goudy, and I travel across the United States, usually leave on a Thursday, come back on a Monday. I take my bike because most of the time I am either racing or sitting on a panel or talking to a festival or a group of people, or sometimes just sitting at a table talking to people about how they can make this sport that they love so much that they can share it with their entire community so that the cycling community looks more like the community outside of it. So I do that, number one. And then number two, I am working to break down barriers for people who want to come into this sport. It's a very expensive sport in the way that there are very many different ways to enjoy cycling. There's some higher level like racing and endurance riding that tend to be a little bit more expensive or a lot more expensive. And I want people to be able to experience all types of cycling. And so I commit to raising funds through my sponsors, like our local bike company here, Yeti Cycles, which people might know, Pearl Izumi, That Tire, a number of businesses that are local to this community who give me the money to be able to break down those barriers. So that might be flying someone in for a festival, making sure they have housing, making sure they have the bike that they need, making sure they feel comfortable. So I'll usually set up affinity spaces. And for people who don't know what that is, an affinity space is just in a safe area where people who have the same unique experience can be together. And so I create a lot of affinity spaces because I think that is very helpful in getting people feeling more comfortable before they can integrate maybe into like an all white male area. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. I mean, just yesterday, I put on a clinic for fourth graders. I'm a mountain biking coach. I really am like spending many, many hours dedicated to this work. Not to mention, Michelle, that I'm still a part time school nurse, which I absolutely love. And the students at my school absolutely love to follow my journey. Whenever you can go to rowdygoudy.com and you can see things that are coming up next. One big thing that I haven't announced yet, but I'll announce here is that I'm going to be going out to Montana, Whitefish, Montana, which is a beautiful place. And I'm going to ride in a race there called the Last Best Ride. It's a race put on by my friend Jess. And it's beautiful, wonderful ride through the mountains. And I have a race 2 weeks later in Steamboat, Colorado. So I've decided I'm going to challenge myself to moving my body for that whole 2 weeks and riding my bike from Whitefish, Montana back to Steamboat, Colorado to the start of that race. And that's happening in August. And people can follow me. I'm working with Strava, so they'll be able to follow me and my little dot as I move forward. And you can cheer me along and send me love messages and messages of encouragement, and hopefully find yourself encouraged and inspired too.
That is so incredible. I'll definitely be following your little dot for sure. Yes, I love it. Just, anytime I'm scrolling through Instagram or Facebook and I just see your face light up the screen, it just infuses joy into me. So yeah, I'm just so thankful that we've reconnected and that you came on and shared your story and caught me up on all the amazing things you're doing. And I know that you've inspired some people. So we'll make sure to put all the links to all your stuff in the show notes. And I definitely hope people will support you, follow you, reach out if they feel like they want to get into it or just know more about what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I'm just so proud of you. So thank you, my dear. Anything before we wrap up that you feel like we should talk about that we haven't touched on?
No, I just want to let you know that I'm really encouraged by the work that you're doing. And thank you for being that light in the darkness and encouraging me to move my body. That what you do is not only just about moving your body, that it is a spark that can ignite a flame that can inspire a person who can inspire many people. And so thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, I am more than blessed and happy to do all of it. That's just what we're here to do, I hope, is to just hopefully encourage others and everyone and work together to be the best versions of ourselves. Everybody benefits from that. So thank you, my darling. Everybody, I know you got a lot out of this. This isn't a conversation about biking. I don't know if you got that or not. This is a conversation about life. And there's so many amazing nuggets that Brooke shared about her journey. And man, she left so much of the story out. Maybe someday I'll have her back on to talk about that other version of stuff. But this was great. Thank you so much, everybody. Now you know it's your time to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.